I'm Joyce Hornady. You might say accuracy is my business. I make bullets.
You are listening to the Hornady Podcast.
Thanks for joining us and enjoy the show.
Hello, everybody. Thanks for tuning in to this episode of the Hornady Podcast. I'm your host, Seth, and today I've got some new guests to the show, guests that I'm proud to have on the show, honored that they came all the way up here to do it. Please join me in welcoming George from G.A. Precision and Tom from Vapor Trail. Guys, thanks for coming on the show.
Yeah, good to be here.
Thanks for having us.
Absolutely. And I said I'm honored because I really am. You know, when you look at my career, air quote career in precision rifle, you guys were staples from well before I got into the sport. So it was always, you know, you hear about you guys or you see your rifles. I know people shooting your bullets, Tom, and it was just kind of cool to see the relationship between you guys and Hornady and how we as a shooting community have benefited from that. And it goes back, like I said, way longer than me at Hornady. I started in 2013. George, you've been friends with the Hornady team for a lot longer than that.
Yeah, I think started hanging out with Dale probably a couple of years before that, but using Hornady products, you know, all into the early 2000s. So yeah, been around a little bit.
Right. Now, Tom, you own Vapor Trail Range, a lot of bench rest, a lot of F-class, and some precision rifle stuff going on down there. How long have you owned that range?
I started building it in the fall of 2011, and the first matches were in 2012 spring.
All right, little sweat equity into building that range.
Yeah.
Awesome. When did you start pulling bullets?
That started the fall of 2013, and the actual bullets come out in 2014. I didn't really start pulling them till the 14.
So tangential to where this conversation's going, but I think this is going to help lay some bedrock for our listener. Vapor Trail bullets. You come from the bench rest community primarily, and you decided I'm going to make my own bullet. How did that go down?
Phone conversation. We had been shooting Clay's bullets for some time. My business partner had, and I had, and I got a phone call from my business partner one night, and he just wanted to know if I wanted to start making bullets. I'm like, well, I never really thought about it, you know. So let me think about this, and I took about 2 days. I talked it over with Sarah, and just like, let's do it.
Yeah.
And that's how it basically started. And Clay was selling out, and we just kind of...
You were able to get some equipment, had support from the wife, and the rest is history. What was the first bullet that you made?
103 grain, 6mm.
Is that still your most popular bullet?
Yep, 99.9% of what goes out the door.
Really? And I've shot a lot of those bullets. George, I'm guessing you shot a lot of those bullets.
Shot a lot of them myself, and they're super crazy accurate bullet. In fact, we were talking last night how great they actually work at the arc as well. So
yeah, the little 6 arc with the 103 Vapor Trail, it is a pretty darn good combo.
I haven't graduated to geezer bench rest yet, but I suppose if I do, that'll be the bullet I'll try.
Awesome. Well, going from bench rest back to kind of the precision rifle sports, George, you've been like a staple in the precision rifle game, not just PRS, but in precision rifles. What kind of steered you towards that career for you in G.A. Precision?
I don't know that there's a real answer for that. I shot high power quite a bit when I was in the military. I shot a lot in Germany, even with the German army. Got back stateside, and high power was kind of a big thing in Kansas and Missouri. There's quite a few places that shoot it, right there in DeSoto and on the Kansas side, and then Bucksnord on the Missouri side. Just kind of got into shooting high power. F-class came around and intrigued my interest a little bit. Sure. It's kind of pushing it out a little bit more distance, got into that a little bit. And then what is now PRS kind of started around 98, 99. Jacob Bynum down in Texas and Dave Locke, which was in Wyoming at the time, was running these matches. And then Grandfield, Oklahoma, which is the Badlands guys, started running matches very similar to what PRS is today. Had more of a sniper or tactical twist back then.
Sure.
But that was like the groundwork of what we now know as the PRS or NRL. So
yeah. And I feel like in both sports, there was this big push of we got to get less wind drift, flatter trajectory, more hits on target. That's always the goal, of course, in precision rifle shooting. And it's been interesting in my short time involved in the sport to see how that pursuit has changed by Cartridge. And we're going to talk in detail. We don't have to beat around the bush anymore. Hornady is now going to be selling 6mm GT to all Hornady retailers. Now, previous to that, you had an exclusive at GA Precision where Hornady loaded the ammo. You were the exclusive distributor, and the cartridge has caught on so much, so well, and it's just so perfectly suited for a variety of precision rifle tasks. We're seeing the demand that we are now taking it in full Hornady fashion, full court press, and that's a cartridge that you guys developed. And I'm going to kind of try to guide this conversation chronologically through the development process on why it was even necessary and then what it's used for today. So starting back in, when did the actual PRS begin? Was that 2012?
2012, yeah.
So in 2012, I don't think I shot my first match until 2013 or 14. There was still a lot of 308 Winchester shooters.
There was a few. I mean, obviously, way back when in 98
Yeah,
to
it was only
2000,
308.
to 2004, whatever, it was all 308s. There was no magazines. Everyone was still loading through the top. I kind of remember, God, there's only a couple guys who remember this guy's name. I think it's Adam Popowell. He's a 3-gun shooter.
Okay.
He showed up at a match down in Rifles Only with a 243.
Yep.
And I believe it was just factory Lapua ammo with maybe with their 105 grain. And kind of everyone started laughing at him. And I kind of just watched him, and I saw that there was no recoil, that the bullets were getting to the target as quick as, or quicker than the 308s, and I kind of liked it. I was like, man, that's kind of cool.
Guess I'm going 243.
Yeah, so I mean, we, like my team or my guys that we hung around started shooting 243, and at the same time, Dave Tubb kind of came out with the 6XC, which is 243-esque, and
Yep.
Everything started gravitating kind of in that direction. Well, back then, we didn't have the target systems we have now. I mean, everything was, LaRue dropped targets, and
So you had to smack them.
you had to smack them. And the 6 mils just weren't cutting it. So as quick as it came, it kind of started to go, and then 6.5s kind of were the new thing. It was even before the 6.5 Creedmoor, but guys were shooting 260s and 260 improves. That got to be hot.
Mm-hmm.
And those would still knock over the targets. And then 308 just started slowly dying.
Yeah, it really did.
Then magazines came in, and the magazine's kind of critical to later in the discussion.
Right.
And people started bringing target systems that moved really well. Like the hangers we have now are like a 1-inch hole on a 1/2-inch hook. So when you hit it, it just wobbles quite a bit.
Right.
So people spotting can see it. There's nothing falling anymore. There's light reaction, to most of the targets past 800. So none of that stuff that we used to worry about as far as the shock on the target's really valid anymore.
Right.
So he can kind of come over there. Then what the glam started being is what's the most accurate cartridge you can shoot. What
that
is the most
shift.
inherently accurate thing to shoot? And you can probably go into it better than me, but people started going to these BR cartridges, which I'll start with, are all fed from a single shot. No mag system at all. They're just throwing one in and closing it. So there's no worry about anything.
Tom, what were you shooting around that time frame? Were you in the precision rifle sports outside of bench rest and F class in 2012-13 time frame? No. So you're still burning it down, and big cartridges and energy on target really not important to you.
No.
And I feel like the 6.5s, like you mentioned, George, the Creedmoor got some steam. The 260 kind of fell out of favor. And then I felt like there was a short race of big 6.5s. And we can take a quick rabbit hole because the Gap 4S.
I thought you might go there.
Yeah.
So the whole idea with that was just purely ballistics. They came out with a set of rules, there weren't really any in the beginning, but a set of rules that you could go 3,200 feet a second. The cartridge couldn't be any bigger than a 30 cal. So started looking at just raw ballistics. What could you push to 3,200 theoretically that had a really good ballistic? And that's kind of where the SOM PRC came from. And I actually did really well for it. In 14, I won the series.
Yeah.
At the end of the year, I was the only guy with a 300 going into the finale. I actually didn't do hot at the finale and ended up 5th overall. But my best finish was with a 6.5 SOM, which became the PRC, obviously.
And that lasted a couple of years, I think, where there was a race of hot, nasty speed, big bullets going real fast. Obviously, they're great in the wind. When we finally did come out with the 6.5 PRC, Joe Thielen, our assistant director of engineering, and a couple of us shot that at some matches. And that was always the wind cheater. If it was a windy stage, who's shooting PRC? You're going first. Let's figure this wind out.
It's kind of like the matches changed a little bit too. And it's not a permanent thing. I think there's always a flow and shift of,
Sure.
of how these matches go, because it's kind of left up to the match director. You have a set of guidelines and you have to fall within that, but there's nothing that says you have to do a lot of positional. I think we've kind of gotten there where most of the matches have all these weird, props that you're shooting off of weird positions. But, back in the day, I can remember shoot for the green in Oklahoma, it was almost 90% laying in your belly and shooting long distance. So the PRC shined at that.
Sure it did.
There's a couple other matches, kind of out west where they got some real estate where you're shooting a lot of belly, where those bigger cartridges, like the Hornady PRC is a good example. It's been one with a 284, it's a PRC. It has been one with a dasher, but most of the time those guys are going to win it with a heavy bullet and a 6.5.
Yep. I think the last time Clay Blackadder won it, which was a couple years ago, he was shooting a 153 A-tip from a 6.5 Creedmoor. Pretty slow.
Yeah.
So in that craze, Tom, intro you to precision rifle sports. What drove you not from, because you're still involved heavily, of course, from the bench rest and F-class world into precision rifle?
Probably before I ever started shooting bench rest, I was actually out there in the hills shooting steel plates.
Yeah.
I didn't even know PRS really was a thing. Me and some friends would get together on my place and shoot.
Have fun. That's what it's all about.
And then I've always liked to do a lot of different things. I mean,
Driven.
Yep.
Got to tinker.
Yep. I like that side of it. I always kind of grew up as a hunter, I suppose, before I ever did any competitive shooting and was into guns.
Mm-hmm.
So the PRS really kind of drew me in, I guess. And I didn't really start going. I think the first match I went to was probably Badley's down there, and then the heat stroke.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Badley and Keeter ran those matches.
Yep.
I actually kept score for them because they didn't know how to run practice score. But
That was the first match I think I ever went to.
What cartridge did you select going into PRS from bench rest?
Dasher.
All right.
I just went right from what I knew. And
Well, I knew the answer. So in the world of bench rest, like George mentioned, it's a race, but it's single fed race.
Yeah.
And generally, from what I've seen, having never competed, they're getting those shots off in a darn hurry. But they're single feeding them. And the Dasher and the BR variants, there's plenty to like about those cartridges. They run on Varget. If you can put Varget in a case, go ahead and do that. That seems to be the answer. And from a raw ballistic standpoint, a slippery little 6mm doing 28 to 2850, pretty tough to beat.
yeah, it's that small charge of Varget 4895, just that quicker burning powder
Mm-hmm.
in a small case. It's a lot lighter recoil, super accurate, easy, like he would tell you, easy to tune, which I don't get into that tuning thing as much as he would, but I just know that the whole idea is you can tune a load really quick. It's just an easy cartridge to do. And the Dasher is just a kind of a hybrid of a BR, just gives it a little bit more oomph and a little bit more power. So
I remember there was the Dasher and the BRX and the BRA and there was just so many different variants, and the Fat Rat, and there was all kinds of stuff really off the same case. George, you brought it up. What really changed the game, one of the pivotal moments, was the standard adoption of AI magazines. So going from bench rest where you're single feeding these little hot rods to now you're trying to get 10 of them in a magazine to run like a skinned cat. What were some of the limitations that you guys saw? Because there's a lot of people still shoot a Dasher and a BR and BRX and BRA. But
so jump forward to now, there are some magazines with a lot longer feed lips, stuff that was made specifically for those BR cartridges to feed. So it's, some of this stuff's getting fixed over time. But
sure,
when this first happened, everyone was using AI mags and trying to make spacer kits for them, or bending the lips certain ways. And essentially the mag had to be tuned perfectly to the gun to feed a Dasher or a BR.
Yeah. And that makes one mag work with one gun, probably not another gun.
What you'd see in matches is constantly guys closing the bolt and it would hang up because the round was popping up at a 45 and laying in there crooked, or it wouldn't close. Then you'd see guys massaging it with their fingers and closing the bolt, and it was just costing time.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes it'd have pure malfunctions where you double feed, or the round would actually pop out of the magazine prematurely and turn in sideways. Just crazy stuff. You'd see it. I mean, I rolled quite a bit, match direct quite a bit, and watch it. So I was always messing with the Dasher guys, basically saying, if you haven't had a Dasher malfunction, you just haven't shot one long enough. And if you didn't have 15 in a match when you first started shooting it, you probably hadn't learned how to tune a mag yet.
Yeah. Well, my first experience with the Dasher, I'm going to air quote problems, not long after I got into it, saw somebody massage the round trying to go into the chamber, and they didn't have their lips tuned perfect. So they massaged the round, and when they took their hands off, like 6 rounds squirted out the top. And I was like, well, I guess I'm not going to build a dasher.
So, yeah, exactly. So I guess we can lead right into it. The whole idea me and Tom were talking about is, me not understanding why everyone was wanting to gravitate towards it. I mean, I knew that they were accurate, but God, if they don't feed, they're pretty worthless at what we do.
Yeah.
And then from being a gunsmith and a manufacturer of firearms, I don't want to build a gun where a guy's going to have problems with it. Even if I can tune the mag perfectly and in my shop it works, the second he drops it, it's not going to work right.
Mm-hmm.
If he buys a new mag, he's not going to be able to tune it correctly.
Right.
It's just a big problem for me. But people are still calling, hey, I got to get a dasher because that's what Clay won with, or I got to get a dasher because Austin won with it. So I still had this problem of, people want it, but I don't want to do it. Just from a problem and manufacturing standpoint.
Yeah. And in a crazy scheme to make money, you build guns and sell guns.
Yeah.
You want to build guns that people want. Obviously, they want the dasher. There's a lot of performance there and any other BR variant. And that is pretty, I don't know, I smile when I think about it. The precision rifle community that we're in now, and the bench rest and F-class community, one thing that joins them is it's like, clicky's not the right word, but it's like, oh, Austin won with that. Guess I'm getting that.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, you're using that powder? Guess I'm using that powder. You look at the leaderboard. Oh, you use this bag? I'm going to buy that bag.
That's kind of a funny story because seldom, bench rest guys, I guess, really the older guys would know, but the dasher wouldn't even have born a BR cartridge. It was a couple guys tinkering around with building a varmint cartridge.
Yeah.
Was it Dan Dowling and Harold Ash? The Dasher.
Yeah.
Yep.
Oh, wow.
Ash, Dan Dowling, Harold Ash, and then his buddy Richard Schatz is the one that started shooting it in bench rest.
He's the one that made it famous.
He made it famous.
Because he probably won,
Yeah.
right?
a lot.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So, yeah, you start winning just like NASCAR. Yeah, race on Sunday, sell on Monday. It's people aren't afraid to spend money in this sport if it will get them an advantage come competition day.
Hornady V-Match ammunition, loaded exclusively with Hornady ELD VT bullets. The low-drag design of the ELD VT bullets provide high velocity retention and minimal wind deflection. Initial offerings include 22 ARC, 6 ARC, 6mm Creedmoor, 6.5 Grendel, and 6.5 Creedmoor. Elevate your varmint shooting experience, shatter records, and make your mark like never before with V-Match ammunition from Hornady.
So what year are you guys having these conversations of, Tom, explain to me why this is good, because all I see is bad, but people want it?
Well, I remember it was at a Spear Point match we first started talking about it. And then by the next year at the Spear Point, we were actually shooting it.
So it had to be 2017, 18?
It might even have been 16. Do you remember when
16,
you started shooting?
17.
Because it was probably a good year after he started shooting, but
Okay.
we were having the conversations.
I would say 17. Just guessing.
Yeah. So the whole idea was if we could make a cartridge that tuned and loaded like a dasher that would feed like a 6.5 Creedmoor, essentially.
You want slick nickel, runs like a rocket sled on rails from George building the gun, Tom for shooting tiny groups at real far away. You need this thing to just dial in right now and shoot tiny groups far away. So how did the conversation start of cartridge? What do you use for a parent? Obviously, you went with the standard bolt face. That's a no-brainer.
There wasn't really a parent cartridge, so it came down to finding the right cartridge to cut down and start messing with, and we wanted a small primer.
Sure.
So a lot of people weren't making small primer brass in anything except LePou was making 6.5 by 47. So that's just where we gravitated towards. The brass has got a good following, so we started chopping it down with a chop saw. Actually, you made the first. You made the first piece, so you may want to talk about it.
With a hacksaw? What'd you do, Tom?
It started on the phone call of the night, and it took me all night. I was in the shop a lot, but so I just started basically bumping shoulders down on a 6.5 by 47. The neck just kept getting longer and longer, and we decided we wanted what we thought we needed versus a BR or a dasher. Let's just stick with the dasher. We wanted to go about 100 thousandths longer to make it work in the mag on the body.
And on the body. And then we wanted a longer neck because the dasher has this little anemic
so
neck.
We went with like a BR style neck, which was about 50 thousandths longer. And I just started bumping them down, and there was a lot of, my shop's not set up for this, but we made it work.
A lot of ruined cases coming down.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
The first one's come out, if I remember right, it had a 40-degree shoulder because I used a dasher die.
Correct.
To set the shoulder.
Yep.
Yeah. And
Yeah, essentially it ended up being 100 thousandths longer body than a dasher,
Okay.
and 50 thousandths longer neck. And
Yeah.
and the 40-degree shoulder doesn't lend itself to being really great for feeding, but 35 seems to be a spot where you can,
yeah.
you
Yeah.
can still feed well. A lot of people ask why not 30. I mean, 30's kind of become a standard, but there's only one other cartridge that I know of that's 35, like that's got a really good following, and that's the 6.5 284, which
yeah.
also is a huge following in long range. So
Absolutely.
I just
for
kind
good
of thought,
reason.
and I just kind of thought, well, let's stick with 35 because it does keep the neck from stretching when you go to a steeper shoulder.
Yep.
And I think that's the whole reason we went with 35. And I remember even calling it the first reamer made 35, huh? And there's actually a book. I think his name was Fred Hart, worked at Remington for eons, and he tested case shoulder angle stuff. I read this book ages ago, but he kind of was saying that the perfect happy medium was 32 and everything he did. And of course, there is nothing that has a 32-degree shoulder on it, but what's closest to that? 35. So that's kind of what we stuck with.
Yeah.
And 40 is the classic Ackley shoulder.
Right.
30, from a Hornady perspective, we went with a 30-degree shoulder. Similar thought process to what you guys have done in the GT, where, okay, obviously you want that shoulder angle to help minimize case stretch. It helps with really good chamber alignment. You don't have to trim as often. It helps with internal ballistics. You don't want that super tall shoulder. For us, 40-degree shoulders are really tough to manufacture.
I know.
That's the main reason we don't like them.
Yep, and that's kind of why we stayed away from it too, because I already knew that in talking to you guys, like
They were
in other
hard
conversations.
to make. They were actually hard to make in the die by hand.
Really?
And I actually went back to a BR die. The very first one was 40. And then I went to a BR die that night and made it 30 because they were really hard to make.
Yeah. For us on the huge manufacturing scale, we end up with a lot of scrap, a lot of hunched shoulders, and it's just a problem. You go from 40 to just 5 degrees, 35 degrees, or down to 30 degrees. You get really all the benefit that the 40 degrees is going to offer you, like the stuff we mentioned previous, but you have a significantly smaller scrap rate. And that's huge. So 35-degree shoulder. Do you still have the first pieces of brass that you made?
Yeah, I'm sure he does.
Yeah,
we got to get you an
I almost
acrylic
brought
spot.
it. I just about did.
He sent one of them to me, and I sent that off to have a reamer made. Dave Kiff measured everything, and I just told him, I said, I know that one's got a 40, but it needs to be 35. And he made a set of reamers for us, a die reamer and a chamber reamer. It actually was called the GS when it first started. Remember that?
Yeah, we don't want to go there.
Yeah. But the GS was just a car name. It was a Buick Grand Sport. I just wanted it to be named after a car because I like collecting cars.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, the Buick GS for sure.
So I
You
got
don't
to
see
thinking,
a lot
well,
of those.
you know, you don't. And I got to thinking, well, I don't even own a Buick Grand Sport, and I didn't want to name it after Ford stuff because I'm a big Chevy guy.
Yeah.
But the more I heard GT, it's George and Tom. It just made more sense.
It's George and Tom. That's what it is.
So that's officially what it is. But it still does have a car name too. It just happens to be a Ford, which I'm not a big Ford guy. I'm not necessarily negative to them. I just don't collect them and stayed on the Chevy side. So that's kind of where the name came from.
Yeah. Well, it's a natural name, and when you can relate things back to Go Fast cars, it's a Go Fast cartridge. Yeah, and George and Tom. It's kind of seems like the perfect name.
Yeah, it made sense. So after we got the first gun made, of course we had to make the neck a little bit different because we were turning the necks. So the first necks were a little bit smaller than what's coming out today. But we decided to buy a bunch of brass and go to Tom's on one weekend, and we sat in his bullet lab and made brass for like 8 or 9 hours.
How many
we
sticks
got
of brass?
600 pieces.
Yeah, we had 6. I'm sure we
We had more, but we quit.
We scrapped, I don't remember, like maybe 20 cases, but basically the process is where you squeeze this huge neck, would be about that long. And
3/4 of an inch long.
And on a case, as it gets, towards the bottom, it gets thicker and thicker. So you had this neck that was thin on top and thick on the bottom. And then we found this little teeny chop saw.
Yep.
Harbor Freight.
Harbor Freight chop saw.
All right.
And we would chop that neck off, and then we'd put it in a Gerard and trim it to length, and then we put it in a mandrel and turn the necks perfectly. And
I think we had like 4 presses set up on that table.
Yep.
Oh my goodness.
We just start in like a little bit.
Increments. Yep. That's dedication is what that is.
and then it was, don't tell nobody, because if it don't work, I don't want to even know we did it. So me and him
Secrecy.
just started shooting matches with it
Yeah.
and picking it up, kind of ourselves. Like everyone was picking up their brass anyway, so we mark ours different, pick it all up, make sure that no one saw a piece, and we shot it for an entire year. Me and Tom did. I mean, we went to quite a few matches that year and shot it.
So was it as plug and play as you anticipated, where like, oh wow, I just put it in this magazine, feeds great?
Yeah, I've still personally never had problems ever with it feeding. A few people that have used some early versions of mags that people made, it had issues, but it seemed to be calm to that mag specifically, and I would just tell people don't use that mag.
Sure.
That company has since made mags that fix their issue, but it never has a feeding issue. It feeds out AW mags, feeds out ASCS mags. Few people that make Dasher spacer kits have started making GT spacer kits, which aren't even necessary, but it helps them from nosing down if their mag gets dirty or whatever,
Sure.
which I guess in the big scheme of things isn't a bad thing.
Yeah.
But it's taken off great. It's done really well, and guys that want an easy tunable cartridge, they now have one that feeds perfectly.
Yep.
If they want to buy factory ammo, obviously you guys have done it for me for a while, and now there's going to probably be more flavors in the future. So
Yeah. It's purpose built to do a job. It does it really, really well. Did you guys have a target velocity in mind when you were setting this case up? Because obviously the 6XC is pretty, I'm going to say large, although it's not that big of a case, a little smaller than 243. And the Dasher obviously is smaller than the GT. So were you targeting a velocity or a charge weight or a burn rate speed?
I mean, we talked about what velocities would be capable, and we obviously took it to the extremes. There's that original really thicker base Lapua brass had a little bit less capacity, so you could get a little bit more velocity out of the same charge, but we've never been able to duplicate the exact specs of that stuff that we made.
Sure.
The current stuff from Hornady and Alpha is identical. I mean, identical as far as weight and identical in the way it shoots. And if you load 2 with the same exact powder, they're going to shoot within 10 feet a second of each other. So it's worked out great. 2950 is probably where I would say the max is. It is definitely possible to get it to 3000. I think a lot of people are trying to do that early on.
Yeah.
I just think you're pushing it a little hard at that point. It's probably safe, but you're going to inevitably trash your brass. So.
Sure. Well, and I feel like in the early days of the GT, 2950, 3000, that's what people were trying for. Now we're seeing the exact opposite.
You're right.
Yep. I was shooting at the gap grind with Shane Barnes, and Shane's running GT. Well, how fast you sending those things? 28, 30 or something like that. Like they're really backing off. Talk to us about the advantages of the powder case capacity of the GT, which is relatively small compared to some other race gun cartridges like the Creedmoor, and why people want to back that speed down.
I'd say they probably do it mainly for recoil management,
recoil mitigation.
If you're on a small plate and you can see the bullet impact the left edge and make just a minor correction to get in the center, it's huge in this game. So everyone's just wanting to see bullet flight, impact, exactly where it impacts. So that's where the trend of going down is managing the recoil.
Yep.
I think where the GT shines, like the more that I've looked at it historically over the Dasher, really is the amount of powders you can use in it.
Oh,
You're
super versatile.
You're pretty stuck with 4895 to Varget speeds, and correct me if I'm wrong because I'm not a Dasher like aficionado, but you're pretty stuck with that if you want to do what it's supposed to do.
Sure.
Where with the GT you can go all the way to 4350 and reloader 16, so you got this medium slow powder all the way down to the 4895. Works with the GT, works pretty well with all of them.
And that today is more important than it's ever been. Is powder. News 11, this just in, there is a worldwide powder shortage for the last year and a half. And so it
seems like 16 and 4350, if you really pack the case full, or it's 104% full or whatever, you can get the most velocity. That Reloader 15.5 that came out, that's like the quintessential perfect powder for right to the bottom of the bullet, max velocity, and then I would think the best for accuracy is going to still be Varget, the Varget types.
Pretty much what when we started, Varget was. We just talked about Varget.
Yeah.
That was the goal.
That was the goal.
Yep.
And
I knew it was going to work with a wider range just because it had a little more case capacity than a Dasher or a BR for that matter. But
a little more boiler room. And I think the Varget, Miles, I'm not sure if you've met Miles, Tom, but he's one of our engineers. His life is precision rifle shooting. He's done a ton of high volume testing, 30, 50, 100 shot, 500 shot composites, looking at various things. And one of the meta-analysis of all of his testing is if Varget fits in the case, put Varget in the case. It just works. You're going to have the best velocity spreads and the best chance for accuracy with Varget. Doesn't know why? Nope, I'm not sure anybody does, but I'll tell you, it just friggin' works. And so having a Varget case is perfect. And then the versatility of Shooter's World Precision, reloader 15.5, reloader 15, reloader 16, 4350. I mean, there's so many other propellants that you can get today. Stay Ball Match is that Varget Speed spherical powder that works really, really well. And it's just neat to see the 6.5 gap and the 6.5 PRC, that hot, nasty speed pursuit. And then you throw in the GT, you throw in people, looking to manage recoil, and it's slow motion potion. You watch the bullet leave the muzzle. You watch it hang out in the air for a little bit. You watch it exactly where it lands. And I feel like that right there is what separates good shooters from great shooters, is even when you hit the target, you can say, okay, I hit the target just a shade left of center. I can make the correction inside the plate. You still got your point, but you're making corrections inside the plate. And that, to me, I think is what separates good from great.
Yeah, and I guess the other funny thing about it is when cartridges take off as being very popular, you can always tell how popular they're going to be by how fast they get wildcatted. And I can't, the GT has been wildcatted by everybody.
6.5, 25, 22. I mean,
20.
Yeah. 20.
I took a 6.5. The 6.5 was kind of on the back of my burner from the very get-go. I took one to the 1,000-yard nationals twice.
How'd you do?
Third in light gun group. I only shot it in light gun.
Okay.
1 year. Actually, I'm still going to go back to that. I've been waiting. I got some jackets set off below the shelf, and I've just not had time to make them.
All right. So you're going to get yourself some special Vapor Trail bullets for a 6.5 GT, which sounds cool. And from the competitive side, the 6 GT really has taken over. It's one of the most dominant cartridges in the sport. At what point did you approach Hornady, or however that worked out, to say, hey, let's get this thing really adopted. Let's get it SAMI approved. Let's get some factory ammo out there, because not everybody wants to hand load.
So my early conversations with Hornady, i.e. Jason, through Neil, were always about, will you do this? Well, the GT was actually discussed with them early on. Once we knew it was going to happen, I mean, the next step obviously was to get made. So I let Neil and Jason know right away. Being that it's big competitor is the 6 Creedmoor, which is still a great cartridge.
Yeah.
I think there's some hesitation by anyone to make something that directly competes with what they did. So Jason said, I'll do it for you for sure, but it's going to be your baby. And that's why it ended up being mine for an amount of time till
3 or 4 years probably.
I think Jason kind of saw, okay, there is a demand for it. George isn't crazy. Let's do this.
He is crazy, but he's right. Yeah.
Yeah. But I let them know early on, like with the SOM PRC thing. I did it. I did it for myself and saw a need for it. Came to him a little late actually, because it was that big rush of ammo. He just didn't have time to do it, right. And so later he did it, and it did really well. So I think I took a little bit of different approach when we did the GT. I let him know very early this was something we were working on. So when the time came, he already knew what was up. But yeah, he's been really supportive of it, and of course he wouldn't be here without you guys. So
right. Well, there's one more ingredient to this recipe, and that's a bullet that never existed until was that a conversation between you and Miles Neville?
It was actually. It was at
the 109 ELD match.
It was at the finale in Oklahoma, the one that Justin Watts ran, and he was on my squad, and we were just sitting there talking about we were talking about the loaded ammo. So you guys made brass first. Yep. The loaded ammo came later, and we're discussing bullets. Well, the 108 is a great bullet, but it's what I call a fat bullet. So it's got a very round front end, the ogives.
Fuller ogive.
Yeah, big ogive up front. Well, the reamer spec that we spec'd was more for a hybrid / A-tip / whatever. And so I knew the 108 would be seated very deep in the case if that's what we went with, and that's not kind of what I wanted. Jason's been steadfast. He's not going to load A-tips, so I knew it was out. Essentially what the 109 is, it ends up being very similar to the A-tip.
Nearly identical.
Nearly identical. Obviously, the length is a little different because the plastic tip's shorter than the metal one, and but that's what we went with, and it's the 109 ELDM, and that's always been just made available to me as well, which I'm not sure if that's changing. I'm assuming it probably is too.
Yep.
So
by popular demand, I can't. I work in the editorial space mainly, social media a little bit, some YouTube channels. The people in those outdoor media creation groups that actually compete, I can't get an email from them about anything else. But can you get me 109s? No, I can't. By popular demand, I think the shooting industry as a whole is a fan of that 109. It really is a happy medium. You get really similar performance to the most premier 6mm match bullet out there, the 110 A-tip, and you get a little bit lower cost because you're not doing the turned aluminum. Great drag characteristics, fits the GT and your free bore perfectly. And I think factory ammo is doing $29.40. A lot of people hand loading that down into the $28.40 range. And when you take a jacket, obviously the jacket takes up space, and lead is very dense. So for the listener, you can have the same shape but different weight based on how much lead is in there. And
it's kind of like the 143 and 147 6.5.
Exactly.
They're made in the same set of dies. One's got a matte jacket, one's the other. So after we sat there and talked about it, it actually made sense. So
I like it.
The Hornady Auto Charge Pro, providing precise, customizable powder dispensing in an easy-to-use, space-saving unit. The new modernized load cell is precise to within 0.1 grain. The Auto Charge Pro offers customizable trickle speeds for various powder types, as well as custom trickle time settings. With a smaller footprint than competing brands, the Auto Charge Pro still offers a large powder capacity hopper. The Auto Charge Pro from Hornady.
The design process and how you guys walked through this and made your brass and kept it secret for a little bit, and then now it's really taken over. One of the cool things that jumps out to me is internally here at Hornady, we have new products, we have a little team, we have meetings, and we develop stuff. Well, there's a lot of things that just kind of go Black Ops Skunk Works kind of deal, like a lot of 7PRC, for example. There's a lot of things that are in that Skunk Works division. And Jason thought he was part of the ops, not the black part of the Black Ops deal. Turns out that Jason is now in we keep him out of the Black Ops stuff. But it's cool that you guys, business owners, you're doing your own Black Ops. I don't know who you're hiding it from, but yeah, you had to keep it secret for a little bit. And that's just been I've been in the back of my head thinking, like, I remember Jason sitting right here saying, "What? You guys did what? No, I thought I was in the trust tree with the nest. Am I not?" Sorry, boss. No, you're not.
I guess there's a lot of reason for keeping things up secret, but like if it didn't work out, there was no reason to talk about it. Right. And then if guys did see it, like for me, they're obviously going to want it, and I can't give it to them. So it's like there's another reason to keep it secret. Is just for the simple fact that at the time, there's no way to teach people how to make the brass the way we did it. There's very few people that would even mess with it. In fact, we found out there was a few bench guys that had toyed around with making something similar. One of his buddies sent him some cases that were very similar. They weren't exact, but they were similar. So this had been thought of by bench guys earlier to make a hot rod bench cartridge. It's just never.
I wasn't even aware of it until after we'd done it. And then this particular gentleman sent me this, and then
I think it had a 40-degree shoulder, but it was similar in length. I mean, it's just a similar idea.
Yeah.
And of course, they weren't doing it for PRS and for feeding. They were just wanting to make a little bit faster dasher, I guess.
And they were looking for that magic. Bench rest guys from the beginning of time been looking for that magic.
Yeah. Well, it's obviously caught on in the precision rifle sports. I mean, that cartridge is ubiquitous now. You can't go to a match up and down the firing line. You're going to see a bunch of them, and that's cool. On the bench rest side of the house, is it still the dashers and the BRs still kind of ruling?
Yeah. BRs and the BR derivatives, basically all the way up to dashers still. I see a few GTs out there. I've shot a GT, a 6, at 1 national and the 6.5 at 2. I still shoot a dasher a lot.
Yeah.
But it's hard for them guys to change from the dasher and the BR and the BRA.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you've been running it for a while. You have your brass, you have your dies, you have your load recipe. It works for you. And yeah, I see that being hard to debug.
It'll take time, but I bet you it actually gets there. After you guys launch this, internationally, there'll be more people that pick up on it that have never even heard of it.
Yeah.
It'll trickle down. It does get used quite a bit in international comp, that 600-yard international comp. I know that the AMU's ordered a lot of it, and they use that quite a bit in it.
Awesome.
A lot of international customers have been buying it for me for brass, and they're shooting it a lot in Australian stuff now for varmints.
How cool is that?
It is kind of taken off even on the backside of you guys even not doing it yet. But I guess a big question it's always seems like happens when you guys launch a new product that there's already in their caliber. Oh, why another 6mm? Well, this one has a purpose. Like maybe it's not for you. I mean, if you're a hot rod 6mm guy, you can still shoot a 243 or a Creedmoor. This one has a niche that it falls into, and it happens to be a pretty popular niche. So I think it's the right way to go. I mean, I really do. I think you guys would do well with it.
I think so. I think there's enough separation between, let's say, 6 Creedmoor and the 6 GT that there's plenty of room for both of them, in my opinion. One of the reasons, like with the 6 Creedmoor, I shot that for 1 season, and that was the only season I ran a 6 Creedmoor, because factory ammo was doing over 3,000 feet per second for my 26-inch barrel. My hand loads were doing 29.75 with 110 A-tips. They were getting to the target so fast, I was missing trace, missing impacts, and my barrel needed replaced at the end of that season.
Yep.
It's like, all right, I can't be pulling barrels off every 900 to 1,200 rounds. It's like every 1,000 rounds I needed, I got a tomato steak and I order a new barrel. It was just too much. And then if I'm hunting, 6 Creedmoor, man, for antelope and stuff, this is fantastic. The GT, a little bit better barrel life out of it, just smaller charge weight, a little bit faster burning propellant.
Yeah, and if guys are getting into it and they're kind of a one-gun kind of guy, I mean, you can hunt with the GT. I mean, a lot of guys are building it for kids. Low recoiling, caliber they already shoot in PRS, and they're like, I'm going to get my kid a lightweight hunting gun in GT and load for him. So
I've shot every year we went antelope hunting. That's
really?
Yeah. Do we want to talk about that pivot field?
No.
Well, in the vein
that was a pistol.
You got a GT pistol?
Yeah.
Oh, what'd you build that on?
It's have you seen Tom Manner's?
Oh yeah,
the little pistol stock.
Yep.
Yeah, built it on that. It's a ton of fun to hunt with and shoot matches. Yeah,
I can imagine. I built my dad a hunting rifle not long after it was like, oh, Hornady's making brass. Yep, we're building the GT. So I built my old man a lightweight Manners stock with a Zermatt Origin action, an affordable little custom action, and an 18-inch carbon fiber proof barrel.
Yep.
It's like, I think the last year that they offered a blank in 18 inches and 6mm. And it's super short. You throw on the suppressor, shooting 32 grains of Vargate with the 103 ELDX. Thing just drives tacks. It weighs nothing. It's short, easy handling, and it's a blast to shoot and to take hunting because it's super effective.
That's all I hunt with anymore. I mean, I wouldn't take it for anything big, but I like it.
Yeah,
a 13-inch. The pistol's 13-inch barrel.
I think
all the way up to 18.
I mean, I kind of get the giggles sometimes at work because there's so many people that call and talking about a cartridge that they're wanting to hunt with, and it's always the same question: will that kill an elk? It's always the same. It's like it's the universal question: will that kill an elk? And the reality of it is pretty much everything in this building will kill an elk.
Yeah, shot placement's king.
I would say if you want to, kill an elk cleanly, regardless of what caliber, just go ahead and practice.
Just get out and shoot.
Get out and shoot. I mean, I think a lot of guys get into hunting because their buddies hunt and they don't really know what it's all about, and they just buy a gun thinking that they can lift it up and shoot something. That's not kind of how it works. I mean, maybe at 50 yards, but pretty much any caliber that's made for hunting can kill an elk if you shoot it through the heart and lungs. So,
right.
But it is the universal question that gets asked to all my guys: will it kill an elk? I want to make a shirt that says, will it kill an elk?
Yeah, you'd probably sell the heck out of them. Yeah, we had our boss, your personal friend, Neil Davies. He just returned from a Utah elk hunt, shooting a 6.5 Creedmoor, 130 grain CX, knocked him stone dead, just like anything else. But you put one through the pump house and Don't need a huge cartridge to do so. So I'm excited about the GT now that, we're kind of making it a little bit more available to our retailers, because there were other retailers like Mid-South Shooters, for example. They'd get it through you and sell it. Well, now with the full stable of Hornady retailers going to have the availability to get the 109 ELD match and the factory ammo, what I'm excited for is two things. Number one, there are already big, I'm going to call them big box store brands, Vergara, Christensen Arms, Browning, where you can go buy a factory produced 6GT. I'm excited to see that stable round out more with more availability. I'd love to see this thing in for my main man back here on the camera, I'd love to see this in a Ruger American Predator, something like that. The other thing I'm excited for is, can't see into the crystal ball, but I'm confident in the coming years, you're going to see the GT ammo family round out with, maybe a hollow point version, maybe a V match, maybe a hunting version, something like that, so that, there's a little bit more versatility from the bullet side to supplement the GT.
I've heard rumors of one already, so I know that it's being thought about already. And just a little light on, I know Ruger's already built them in RPRs. I'm not sure.
Testing it. I know that Browning has a PRS production gun that they've worked with it on, And how do I know? Because guess where they buy it from now? So yeah.
But I know that they're working on this stuff. Vergara, actually, their team shot it at the Gap Grind, and I know that because they called me right before the match, freaking out that I was out of it. And I'm like, no, you got the last 8 cases that we had in the shop, but guess what? 3 more pallets showed up the next week. So it's kind of cool to see that, big brands are already glamming onto it. And some of them called and said, hey, are you sure you're always going to have this? Because we really want to do it, even though Hornady's not mainlining it yet. As long as we know for sure you're always going to have it, we're good with going forward. And that's why some of these have leaked out already, but I'm pretty sure when you guys announced, what is it?
October 16th, so it'll be the week when this airs, it'll been announced a week ago.
Yeah, so that's when they'll all find out that it is officially available through Hornady, and then they'll maybe get their sites straightened up on it a little bit. So
I actually got a Vergara in the shop GT.
Yep, I know
Shane
Vergara
sent me one, and
how cool is that?
It's probably the first. I'm just sitting there while he's talking. I think that's the first factory rifle I've owned in probably 10 to 12 years. I'm actually anxious to shoot it this fall. When things slow down, I just put it in the safe, and I'm looking forward to playing with it. Because it's kind of neat. For me, it's a big
super
deal.
Rewarding. It's got to be. And so on behalf of everybody that's ever shot the GT or ever will shoot the GT, job well done, guys. It's got to feel good seeing the success of something that you guys work so hard on.
And we didn't really cover it, but it's a great cartridge in a gas gun. I mean, absolutely perfect. Just the length of it, the fact that you can still play with the bullet length if you hand load and fit it in a magazine for, an AR-10, GAP-10 type platform. I know at the Gap Grind, it was one with the GT this last weekend. Last 2 years ago, I shot exclusively gas gun all year with a GT, and then some of the guys I shot against that were the top guys kind of all gravitated towards it. Yeah. So now I'm just taking a stab here. So I would say over 50% of the gas gun guys, especially the top guys, are using a GT or a 22 GT. They've already wildcatted to even recoil lighter. So
and Alpha making the brass, so that there's a good home for that.
Yeah, Alpha makes a 22 GT, and if you're a big subsonic guy and you take an 8.6 Blackout and set it next to a GT, you might see where maybe he got that idea, because they're pretty dang similar.
Yes, they are. Yep.
The Hornady Trek Light Lockbox XXL. Constructed of an advanced impact-resistant polycarbonate featuring dual 4-digit TSA locks, the Trek Light Lockbox offers heavy-duty protection at a third of the weight of steel. The included 1,500-pound rated security cable with patented cable connector maximizes cargo space for up to 2 full-sized handguns. The Trek Light Lockbox XXL from Hornady Security.
Awesome, guys. Well, I'm going to shift gears on you. Completely shift gears. The GT is awesome and will continue its reign of awesomeness. We're going to leave that in the rear view. I got to shift gears. Every guest that we have on this podcast, every single one of them, when they're a new guest, we ask them the same question. It's a tough question, too. Good news is it's hypothetical, but we did a whole episode on this, and we had a viewer, Mason McNeil, write in and suggest this. And the listeners have tended to really like hearing the insight from the industry pros, if you will. So I'm going to ask George first, Tom. I'm going to give you some time to think about it. It's a tough question. And in this hypothetical world, you can have an infinite amount of firearms. Guns galore, any of them, in any configuration you want, heavy, light, short, long, machine gun, single shot, you name it. You can have any of them, all of them. And the ammunition supply is infinite. If you had to pick one cartridge to do them all, everything had to be chambered the same for all your hunting and shooting. If you had to pick one, what would it be?
6.5 PRC.
6.5 PRC. Now expand on that.
When you said all, so I like to hunt, so
Got to have a hunter.
So the GT is a great cartridge, but I don't think I'd take it to Alaska and go after big moose and brown bear, so it kind of drops it out.
You like to compete?
I like to compete, and I already have proved that it can be done with that caliber. It may be a little harder now with all the props, but it could still do its job. The recoil is light compared to other big hunting cartridges. I'm not going to get off a plane in Africa and be told, no, you can't shoot that here. It's big enough where they're not afraid of it.
Yep.
I just think, it's the one do all. I mean, I guess you could go down a rabbit hole with different scenarios. Like if I didn't have the means to do any traveling and shooting, and I'm just stuck in one spot on a mountain somewhere, maybe I'd want something like a 223 or maybe even a rimfire, but for that matter, but
the ammo's infinite, so if you're shooting rabbits, you can head shoot a rabbit.
Yeah, no, seriously. I think the 6.5 PRC would be my do-all.
Awesome. That's been a pretty popular answer on the show. Tom, have you had sufficient time to think about it?
Yeah, that's a tough question.
It's a tough question. It's a horrible question, honestly.
Yeah. I kind of got to side with George on this deal because I'm a 6mm fanatic and have been since I was a little kid. But if you want to go to Alaska or even there's other places, I think I'd feel more comfortable with a 6.5 PRC probably. I really do.
Yep.
Or any,
6.5 PRC.
F-class wise, I could shoot a match. I don't shoot a lot of F-class. I do a little. I could shoot a match with a 6.5 PRC and feel comfortable. Bench rest at 1,000. Never tried it. I have to try it and see.
Might have to.
But
well, good thing this is hypothetical because you don't have to.
Bench rest at 600, it's not going to hang in there. I know that. It's hard to out-ag the little dashers and the BRs, but I like to hunt too. So I'm thinking that would be, if that's all I could have, that'd be it. That's
both good answers. I will say the second part to this question I didn't ask. Normally it's pick a cartridge and pick a bullet. That's pretty tough, but I didn't want to answer that or ask that one because Tom, you got to have some allegiance to Vapor Trail bullets.
And that's pretty simple.
Yeah. The ELDX is a really solid answer because it's a match accurate hunting bullet, but 6.5 PRC and a variety of bullets, good answers nonetheless. All right, guys. Well, is there anything in the world of 6GT that we didn't explore that you guys think we want to leave our listeners with as we close this thing out?
I would just say if you've been thinking about a cartridge to start PRS with, it's probably the best starter cartridge. I mean, it's just, there's everything for it. There's lots of brass available from different manufacturers and more coming. There's, multitude of powders it works with. I will say one thing that's been a thorn, I guess, a little bit, and it's not just for the GT, but any of the cartridges that have came out for a standard bolt face or 473 bolt face with a small primer, you have to have a small firing pin. So I just tell the listeners that if you're thinking about converting your Remington 700 that's got an 082 firing pin, it's going to have issues with that primer.
Sure.
It's nothing to do with the caliber or the cartridge, just the primer.
Yeah.
So just know that you have to have that your bolt bushed and the firing pin turned down.
Simple process if you send it to GA Precision.
Yeah, there's a multitude of people, but yes, it does need to be done. It's not a can you get by? Eventually you're going to have problems with it cutting through and everything, but that's the only thing I can think of.
Yeah, that's just a small caveat because a lot of these custom actions are going to be no problem.
Yeah, and I think almost everyone now that's going to build a GT knows that, so it's just going to be on the custom side. If you have an action that you've had 5 or 6 years and it's set up for large primers, you need to make a modification to the firing pin before you build one, but that's the only thing I can think of that probably wasn't covered.
I think so.
Well, I will agree with you, George, 100%. When people ask me, hey, I just did my first match and I borrowed some equipment. I want to get into it. What cartridge should I go with? I usually tell them 6 GT or 6.5 Creedmoor because you get good barrel life. You don't need a super hot rod. Get something where you can go out, shoot the dang thing, and shoot it and shoot some more. Because to get good at the sport, you just gotta shoot. And barrel life and recoil management and having factory ammo options is a big part of that, especially as an up and comer if you're not a hand loader.
Yeah, what I like about it is if you are time crunched. Like I like to hand load obviously for myself, but if I'm time crunched, I know I'm coming off of this and that, and I'm not going to have time before that match to load. I can always just grab a case and go.
Yep.
Which makes it nice.
It does. Awesome, guys. Well done with the cartridge. Thanks for coming up. I can't wait to wrap this up and show you guys a little bit how Hornady's grown over the last couple of years because our facilities have certainly changed. And
looking forward to it.
Yeah, with that, thanks again.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Thank you.
It's been a pleasure.
Guys, thank you for tuning in to this episode about the 6mm GT with the legends themselves, George and Tom, who designed this cartridge from the ground up to be the ultimate precision rifle competition cartridge. We hope you enjoyed it, and we'll catch you on the next one.